This little video here is to get you started on some of the ways that I make these stuffies. Now, one of my most basic patterns, as I mentioned in the previous video, was one to a whale, where this makes up two sides to the whale and this makes up its underside. So you kind of have to, first of all, to do the top side, trace the two pieces in opposite directions. For the top side, I prefer to use a darker denim, and for the underside, I like to use a lighter blue denim. So, to start with, we're going to demonstrate here how we make the top side. Now, as you will also see here, something that I kind of like to do is try to make it so that the lines that are on the inside of the denim can be going the same direction for each piece, which may mean that if the piece was long enough or wide enough, you would kind of have to do it this way for one and this way for the other, or even do it maybe this way and this way, whatever works best. And sometimes, the lines will go straight, sometimes the lines will go diagonal, but it's best to try to kind of make it in a way where if the diagonal is going this way for the left side, it should go this way for the right side. So we're going to try to trace it out here the best we can. I think the way it's turning out, we're pretty much going to line up the pattern so that the lines in the denim go straight across the thing. So this is how it will turn out here, and this is the way that I get off to a good start. Sometime there might be a future video where I will show you all how I make the patterns, how I draw them out, how I make the dimensions. But we're going to kind of start with the basics here, do it from the most simple pattern that's already been made. And of course, this might be something in which I am very experienced in doing it on my own, but I will say that it becomes something where to do a video, sometimes it's better to try to start out with the basics, because to do an instructional video, sometimes you kind of have to learn one step at a time, and an instructional video is something which itself is an entirely different thing to get experience with. So I am just starting to get experience with doing that. And as you can see here, I have made it so that I have, with the ink pen, drawn the lines to make both sides of this. And as you can see, this is kind of a little bit of a darker shade than this. Currently, I'm out of the pieces that could make it much darker. That's probably the darkest piece I have clean right now. Like I said in an earlier one, I try to save the dirty ones for pigs and possums and things like that. But now we're going to try to do the underside. And we're going to do the underside on the lighter piece of denim. And we're going to do it in a way where the lines in the inside of the denim will go straight across to make it. So this is how we're going to go about that. We're going to draw little lines with the pen to try to trace around it make the shape out, and we're going to show how it's done as we come along later. You have to make sure you keep the pattern straight. Do not let it slide in different directions while you're doing this. And so this is how the underside of the whale has come out, as you can see up close here. With the cameras I have, it's hard to do much. As for right now, it would be a good idea just to kind of put the pattern away so it doesn't get lost. And what I'm going to show you next is what I do with scissors. As you will see, I use a special kind of scissors that are used for fabric. You don't want to use for fabric the same ones you use for paper, and you don't want to use for paper or cardstock or cardboard the same ones you use for fabric, because using it with paper or cardstock or whatever will dull the blades so that they won't work with fabric. So here's how this is going to come out. I'm going to cut along the lines of what I have traced here, and try to make it come out good. There will, in fact, be a little work involved as you come a little further along. But you should always try to cut straight along the lines. There's been times with some of these where sometimes I've drawn the pattern in the wrong place on the denim, and sometimes had to draw it over in another place, and sometimes it might cause the lines to overlap a little bit, but that's okay as long as you can separate which lines are which. As you go about this work, there will be a lot of trial and error that is involved. So I will say that you've just kind of got to learn it little by little, just like I did. It gets a little hard here and there, but it gets a little better and a little easier the further along you get. And I will tell you all that in order to sew this thick denim, it is a good idea to have very strong hands like I have. I have very strong hands by nature, and if there's anything that requires too gentle a touch, it's probably something I can't do. It's kind of like whenever I volunteered in a wildlife rehab center, one thing I could never do was feed the baby raccoons their bottles, because you got to have a gentle touch to do that. And I mean, my hands are too strong. I'm kind of a little too high strung. I mean, I was just always more concerned about getting bitten. I was just always wanting to do it fast, get the job done. I couldn't really be gentle enough to do it. So it was just kind of the thing that was just best if not in my hands. I just cut out the two top sides now, and I'm about to cut out the underside as well. And one thing I will also point out later on is that among the lessons I've learned in life is before you can really use a pair of jeans, somebody has to have worn them for a long time, because if they are too new or if nobody's put some wear in them, they might still be too tough to work with. I just learned that fairly recently. There was a pair of jeans that my father had, and he cut off the legs of them and used them to work in the garden. And the reason was because the jeans kind of had a loose dye in them that was coming off his socks. And when he cut off the legs and I tried to save the legs of it to work with, it ended up coming out so tough that I couldn't work with it. And once I tried to sew it, it would be so hard to turn anything out that I sewed from it. And more than that, the dye was even coming off on my hands and coming off on the little wooden thing that I use to try to turn it right side out. So I just come to say that there's just some pieces that are going to be simple to work with and some won't. And among many things, one of the things that really inspired me to try to make the animals out of jeans was learning the story about how Levi Strauss invented the pair of jeans. And in his time, denim was only material that was used to make tents. That was all they did with it back then, and he was the first one to make a pair of pants from it. What I would like to tell you all is that it was because construction workers were always ripping their pants so much at work, so he invented the jeans so that the construction workers could have something to work in that wouldn't rip so easily. And they didn't really become a fashionable thing or a stylish thing until so many years later. However, these are how the the three pieces of the whale have turned out. I will tell you all that I have some more advanced patterns that I made. They have many more pieces to them. Some of the latest ones I made are just much more detailed, have much more detail in them, in their paws and all, and we'll probably get around to doing some of that work eventually. But since this one is only three pieces, I think this is the best one to start with as far as showing you all a video on how to do it.